joined by Kerry, thankfully. For anyone that doesn't know Kerry, she's a run coach, experienced ultra runner herself, and she writes the training plans for our Trail Series events. So basically the best person to answer your training questions, especially if you're taking on an ultra marathon for the first time, which will be the focus of today's session. Kerry, do you want to tell everyone a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so thanks, Jessica. Yeah, I'm sort of done a fair amount of ultra running. I started on events like Threshold Trail Series, sort of 50k, 100k events. I got the bug fairly quickly and moved into multi-day events, things like Marathon des Sables, Jungle Ultras, Everest Trail Race. Before then, coming back again and doing 100-mile events and sort of the one long day events, which have really caught my interest of late. And I'm recently doing the Spine Race and looking to things like Cape Wrath Ultra, Dragon's Back, and those sorts of races. So that's a very quick overview of me as a runner and as an ultra runner. And then I was fortunate enough that my passion became my job. And I now am a run coach, helping others expand their running horizons, finding the love in the challenge of an ultra. And this is why working with Threshold really suits me. It's helping people achieve their goals and their passions. And yeah, and what then brings me here to try and share a little bit of the experience that I use as a coach with my athletes.
So if you could come a little bit closer, maybe. You're quite quiet. I can hear you. Just
Okay, there we are.
That should be better. Yeah. I know you've coached a lot of people that have done our events, like some of which like first time ultra marathoners.
Yeah. Many people, lots of different stories, and that's the beauty of an event like yours. There are people who are coming at this for the first time. There are people who've had some serious injuries that are trying to achieve things that they never thought possible. Everyone is pushing, and as everybody's got their own stories, and that's the beauty of ultra running.
Yeah, it's great. So we've had a lot of questions in, as you can imagine. So we're going to do our best to try and get through as many as possible. I've got them here. We might have a chance to get to a couple during the live. So if you think of something whilst the live's going on, just pop it into the comment box below, and we'll see if we can get to it at the end. But yeah, let's crack on. So the first question's a bit of a long one. Some weeks I'm finding it hard to get to the training sessions, particularly as work is getting busy. So any tips for this? Secondly, I'm quite intimidated by some of the sessions. How can I mentally prepare myself to go out?
Oh, okay, yes. Not yet. That the planning comes into this, and I as a coach I use the 3 P's. 3 P's being preparation, planning, and practice. If you launch straight into the practice without your planning or your preparation, something's going to possibly sort of fall apart for you. You want to really have your planning down pat. When am I going to do my runs? Obviously within reason, we've all got busy lives. When can I reasonably fit them in? How many can I reasonably do within a week? And not overface yourself. What the guy next door might be able to do is not what you can do. He will have a different, life story going on. So make your planning a priority, and try and do that on a Sunday evening potentially, where before the week starts, you say, well, I know that I'm better in the morning because that's when I'll be able to get out and the house is quiet, and set those in your diary. The beauty of also training in the morning is that if something gets in the way and you have had to skip it for whatever reason, you've then got the rest of the day to hopefully catch up on that session. I also say to myself, and I use this one, get dressed in your kit in the morning, because it's highly unlikely that you're going to take your kit off not having used it. So that's a motivator to get you out of the door as well. If you're already dressed. Another one with the clothes is putting it out the night before, particularly if you're doing an early session. Get it all laid out, so there's no messing about, there's no faff. You get out of bed and you get into your kit, and out of the door you go. Some people find training with friends, the accountability of that actually helps. Making sure you meet somebody. It's far harder if you've got to sort of tell somebody you're not turning up. Then so that's another good way. And then when it comes to sort of getting out of the door, you think, oh my God, you know, I just don't want to go. It's wet, it's raining or whatever. First of all, just break it down. Put your shoes on, get out of the door, tell yourself you're going to do 15, 20 minutes and see how it goes. You can also do reward yourself, lots of rewards to have when you come home, and also tell yourself, rarely does anyone regret a run. You will most likely come back feeling invigorated, sort of more full of beans and full of life and prepared for the day than if you hadn't done it. So that's always a good one to fall back on.
Yeah, that's what I always tell myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, another one we've had in loads actually is, do I need poles?
Poles. This divides a lot of people. My take on poles is that if you are going to power hike more than you're going to run, then I would use them. They will help support your ankles, your knees, your hips, and I love them because they produce like a metronome effect. So they'll stop you from getting into that sort of slow yomp. The tic tac of the poles on the ground, or you know, it actually keeps you in a lovely rhythm, and it keeps you going quicker than perhaps you might if you didn't have them. Coupled with that, the use of the upper body, which then gives your knees and hips some support and stops them getting tired, then that also doubles up. Just a word on poles. Use them correctly would be my only thing. Use the what are they called? The loops that are provided on the top of poles. They're there for good reason. So just research how to use poles before you do it, and then you'll get the maximum benefit from them. And making sure your poles replicate your steps. So it's not a case of, you know, pole down 3 steps, other pole down. And I use 2 poles. One pole won't give you the benefit. I'd use 2 poles because you're balanced. What else to say about poles? I think on these particular races, the inclines are not so great as to need them for the climbing. For me, it would be a case of, if you're thinking you're going to power hike, then I would use them. If you have knee injuries or old injuries and you're worried about your knees, that would help you. And maybe if you're doing a 2-day, you can run the first day and put your poles in the bag for the second day when you might like less support.
Yeah, that kind of leads me into another question we had in, which was from someone who's an experienced runner that's never done an ultra marathon before, of how much they should be walking the course.
Oh yeah, okay. This is the beauty of ultra running, that it's long and you need to conserve energy. So on these particular events, the inclines will be walked by most people, most sensible people, because if you're running up them, the gain you will get from running at a slow pace over someone who power walks is going to be so marginal, and in fact will probably be detrimental to you in the long run when your body's quite tired, because you'll put yourself, you'll expend far too much energy. So always walk the gradients, unless obviously you know, you're looking to punch at the top of the field, then perhaps that's a different story. But I would imagine any of us in this conversation now, we're looking to walk the gradients and to run off the tops and any of the flats. I think you also want to be thinking about breaking your walking up. So if you do find you get into a run-walk situation, try and be quite strict with yourself and say, well, I'm going to run for 30 minutes and I'll walk for 5 and I'll eat during that time and I'll refuel and then I'll run on again. And so by doing that and having a strict sort of discipline, you will avoid losing so much time, which is very easy to do on an ultra. Time just slips away. You know, if you get into that, oh my God, I've been walking for 20 minutes and it felt like 5 when you're tired. So I'd say that would be another idea.
Permission to walk up hills sounds great.
Yeah. Yes.
Just had a question on poles again, but just to let people know, this will be available to watch afterwards on Instagram TV. So if we've covered stuff that you've missed, you can catch it afterwards. To go back on to a kit question, people are asking what sort of things they should consider when picking a backpack for the trails.
Okay, yes, good one. An essential piece of kit. And I think gone are the days when your backpack is sort of slotting around on the back and it's rubbing in your shoulders and your lower back. Backpacks these days are made to fit, and they're made to fit really well, particularly the running packs. You know, I've got a number of them, and they are like hand in glove. They fit me beautifully well. They don't move around, and in fact, I can forget I've got them on, other than that it wasn't for the weight that I've got in them. You know, you shouldn't actually feel that they're there. The thing to think about with those is pockets, and they're all made differently. But I sort of work on the premise that I don't really want to take my pack off once I've got it on. So to have available pockets at the front or slightly behind, where you can easily reach them, is a really good idea. And practice where you're going to put things. I mean, it might sound a little bit, I can't even think of the word, but I make sure I know where everything's going to be. So I know where I put my headphones, I know where I'm going to put my phone, and my gloves and my hat. So when you're tired, you're not scratching around thinking, God, you know, which pocket were those in? And then you're taking your pack off, and again, sort of getting yourself in a fuddle and losing energy where you don't need to. Be really disciplined. Know where you've put everything. Work with the pockets that you've got, but also before you buy a backpack, make sure that the pockets and the pocket systems work for you. And the other thing with packs is whether you use a bladder, which is the big plastic container that goes in the back, and you drink through a pipe, or you're going to have 2 bottles at the front. It does come down to personal preference. My advice would be to not dismiss the bottles at the front. They work for me and for most of my clients for a few reasons. One is that you can have one that's got electrolytes with water, so you're able to mix it up. But then the other thing is that you can see how much you've drunk, which is crucial. If you are filling a bladder up, you don't actually know how much you've got left in there, and so that you might not be drinking enough to fuel you and to keep you hydrated. The other thing is packing, refilling. Much easier to get a bottle out the front, take the lid off, you go into the station, you fill it up, and you're back. If you've got to take your pack off, and you know, then the water sloshes around, and maybe you've got wet, you know, you've wet your shoulder, what are they called? Your arm, whatever. You don't. Yeah, I would suggest bottles are the way to go.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that happens when you're tired, I guess.
It is.
Everything goes a bit wrong.
All cold hands, you know, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Great, really useful. A question on kind of planning and training. So what's more important, time on feet or massive mileage? And I guess it kind of ties in people asking how long their longest training run should be.
Yes. Oh, the classic question. Yeah. I think people get hung up on mileage. I personally believe. I'm not a coach that thinks everyone needs to go out and absolutely hammer themselves over the trails for many miles. I worry that for certainly inexperienced runners and walkers, you can actually do yourself quite a lot of damage if you're out there for a long time. The risk of injury when you're running with poor form is heightened over anything over sort of 3.5, 4 hours, unless you're really well trained for that. So I put in long runs. That's not to say I don't put them in. I do put them in, but we're using those sparingly. We're using them mindfully to practice nutrition, to practice hydration, to practice all your pockets, you know, where everything is, and also to develop mental strength, to know what it feels like to go over that sort of distance, so that when you come to the event, you're not thinking, do you know what, I haven't got a clue what's going to happen to me after 20k. You've got some semblance of an idea of how your body might cope. Also, I think that probably sums it up without going on too long. Long runs will take long recovery, and we don't want to impact our ongoing training too much. So I'd be wise with the long runs and how many of them you do.
Yeah, we've had a couple of questions in again on recovery, like a couple of people asking how to recover from the longer runs, and actually recovering from the event itself.
Yeah, a good one. And there are things you can do for that. Some of you would have come across the Wim Hof cold water work, ice baths and things, and that does help. If you can you don't need to go into an ice bath or buy copious amounts of ice from the garage. Just run a cold bath and sit in it for a little while. That does help with recovery. You've also got salts, bath salts. Those are great for putting in your bath to just get all of the hydrogen ions and things all sorted out and balanced out again for you. Fueling. If you fuel, even on a training run, if you fuel well, and you don't go into a deficit, you're going to be up and ready for the next run, the next day, the next couple of days. So even if you don't feel like you need fueling on a particular run that you're doing, training run, be mindful that actually you're banking credits for the next run. Also, obviously, eating when you're finished, and you know, eating well, the right sort of thing, protein and carbohydrate when you're finished within the 20-minute window, if you possibly can. That's another good one to help with your recovery. And then if you can elevate your legs, some people wear compression clothes and find that that works for them. I certainly use that sometimes overnight. It's not a great look, but you know, sometimes you've got to do this thing for your love, for the love of running. So some compression wear is good. Elevating your legs, as I said. A little bit of sort of stretching, and obviously rollering is going to help you as well. Most things.
Cool. We lost you a little bit there, but I think I
Okay.
can hear you. I can hear you, so that's amazing. You mentioned fueling. Had a question come in to say like fueling, how much and how often, and particularly like how do you get around eating when you really don't feel like it and you know you have to.
Tricky, yes. I mean, I think all of us know that you know, our bodies are incredible machines, but we do need to sustain them. And there is without getting, I don't want to get too sciencey, but there is a general rule of thumb that 60 grams of carbs an hour, which translates roughly into about 250 calories an hour, is what you want to aim for if you can. I'd also say start eating sooner than you think you need to. Perhaps not in the first hour, because you'd have had a good breakfast and you've possibly just, you know, topped up your levels just before you start. So the first hour, perhaps you just stick with water. But from then on in, I would say definitely start eating little and often, if that's what suits you. Some people can, you know, can eat a huge bar and as they're running along, and it's absolutely fine. Others, like myself, find eating really challenging, so I tend to nibble as I'm going along. And what I tend to use as well is liquid fuel. Sounds a bit strange, but I use a sort of a carbohydrate mix that I put into my water, so I can just drink that alongside my other bottle of water, and I'm getting A, hydrated, and B, I'm getting my nutrition through that. There are a number of brands that will supply that if that's what you choose to do. And you'll hear ultra runners talk a lot about real food, and that is because gels, whilst they have a place and they're fantastic, you do need to be a little bit careful with them. If you like gels, that's great, but use them alongside real food. Obviously, your aid stations are really well stocked, and there's lots of fantastic choice there that you can pick up as you go through. I'd say practice what you want to eat. See how it feels. See whether you can chew as you're running, and if you can't, then maybe you can sort of practice doing that. Maybe you want something that's a little bit more liquid. They're starting to make. I used to eat a lot of baby food, sort of those packet foods, and they're now starting to bring those out in ultra running packets for ultra runners to use as well. So they're into things like fruit. But I would say another thing with ultras is sort of, obviously you have to have food. You have to make sure that you can support yourself between the aid stations. But you know the aid stations have got a lot of food on them. So I wouldn't sort of pack your backpack as if you're going on a sort of a massive yomp where you're not going to see food. It's only added weight, which will you know, slow you down. So I would take what you need to cover the moments between the aid stations, but know that you can refill on the aid stations. And then, like you say, it can get difficult when you're deep into an ultra. The last thing you want to do is eat, and that's a difficult one to answer, to be honest, because everyone's very different. I would say just go with what you feel. So, you know, if you never ever touch Coke, as I don't, on an aid station, flat Coke towards the end of an ultra run is absolutely, it's nectar. It's absolutely beautiful. I love it. Same with tinned tomato soup. Again, for some reason, I just really appreciate it late in the day. But if I was to set out and if I was planning my ultra run, that's not something I would ever think I would want to have. So your taste buds will change potentially. So just go with what you want to eat. Little and often, maybe a couple of jelly babies. You know, if you still are taking gels, half a gel, just as long as you keep getting in. And just remember that really is the recipe to getting to the end in any sort of shape, is to keep yourself fueled. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's important.
That definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. I know this is one you're really hot on, so I'll get to this one next. So what mental strength tips do you have for when it gets really hard?
Oh yes, love it. Love the mental side. Mentally, I mean, an ultra is so much about the mental game. Lots of tips. I'd start off by logging your runs. Start off by, it might be on your computer, it might be on a piece of paper, it might be on something that, you know, you've printed out the training plan and you just write, even just a little smiley face next to the runs that you've done. A log is a great way to give yourself confidence when you start to potentially have those little niggles and the doubts ahead of the event. So you can look back and you go, look, I've done all of this training. I mean, if you want to add it all up and look at the months, kilometers, and that's always a great one. You look at, look at what I've done. This is, an extraordinary number of hours on my feet. So a log is a great one. Every run you do is giving you some sort of challenge, whether it's in the rain, in the sun, against wanting to go out. You still got out. Maybe you're very stressed and you've pushed to get through. All of those are building mental strength. So each run is in itself a work in your own mental game. So that's something to also be cognizant of.
I've lost you on the sound a bit. Sorry, Kerry, can you hear me?
Just looking at 5Ks, maybe you want to go as short as the next tree, whatever it is. Just work towards that next goal and not think about what's remaining, because rest assured, you might go through a down dip, you will come out, you will come through it, and it's trusting that that's going to happen. I had a few other thoughts on that. Oh, knowing your why, very important. Why am I here? Because when you're hurting, when you're cold, when you're tired, knowing why you're doing it is crucial, and it will keep you motivated. So I suggest in training, drill down to knowing why you want to do this and why it matters to you. And one last one on that, I mean, I could go on for absolutely ages on this particular subject, is I like to dedicate a run to somebody. It might be somebody who can't get out there and do it for whatever reason. Maybe they're in a hospital bed or they're ill or whatever, and you think to yourself, I'm going to do it on their behalf. Perhaps unfortunately it's for someone who's not with us anymore. Those are all good motivators and keep you on the trail when you don't want to be there. One last one on that. I say to myself, this too shall end. This too will end. It all ends. Okay, and just think you can sit down for weeks, months, years afterwards, but just get to the end, because you will get there, and trust that.
That's great. I feel like we could do a whole Q&A just on the
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Cool. I'm conscious of the time though, so I'm going to move on to another one. I think, yeah, this is one I've seen come in on the live, and we've had it come in before. Should I be supplementing my running with other types of training?
Yes. Yes, a big yes. I'm a real exponent of strength and conditioning. If you think about it, a lot of people just focus on your legs and the running or the walking aspect, but there's just so much more within that. Your core is going to be supporting your hips, and your hips are then obviously, we go down the chain, your knees, your ankles and things. If you get your core nice and strong, you're then going to be able to run for so much longer holding good form, which means in turn less likely to get injuries, particularly when it's in training, but then less likely to get into a really painful situation when you're in the ultras. So I would really recommend some strength training. It doesn't have to be involved. It can be, squats and lunges, calf raises on your stairs at home. all those sorts of things will really help you work on just keeping your full body stability. Upper body, people forget your upper body. You're going to be carrying a bit of weight. You know, press ups, planks, all of these things are worth doing. And I like to do a lot of band work with my clients. So you get yourself a band, a TheraBand, and you can do an awful lot of glute activation work, which a lot of people miss out when they're running. We all have sort of weak glutes for one reason or another, and that's another good thing to do. I'm just thinking, anything else? Twice a week, if you can, particularly at the beginning. If you want to then ease that out to when you get towards the event itself, that would be a good thing to do. And then obviously cross training, cycling is excellent. I've known people that have gone and done runs when they weren't able, they've gone and done events when they weren't able to run based on some cycling work that they did. So that's good for cardiovascular work. It's also good for strength. You can do some sort of hill stuff on your bike. And then swimming, because it's not impacting, you know, your joints and things. So that's a nice cross-training thing to do, which just sort of gives you some sort of relief from the pounding of the trails.
Yeah, sounds good. Another one kind of on like time and planning. So like, how can I get the long runs done when I don't have time to go out on big sessions?
Oh yes, tricky. And you know, as the world's opening up, time, you know, we're not all around at home anymore, and that is really difficult. What I would say is back-to-back runs, that's running say Friday and Saturday, work really well. And the reason they work is because you're running on tired legs on the second day. So it's that, you know, working on building up the strength through the repetitive motion on that second day. You can do an evening run maybe on the Friday and an early morning run on the Saturday. So again, you've broken it up, but you haven't got as long recovery as you might otherwise. So that's another way to break up your long run. Or you can do maybe get out early in the morning on the Saturday and then get out later on the Saturday. So it's a double day run. They are brilliant for breaking up long runs and giving you bang for your buck. So that would be, I think, probably some good ones that are off the top of my head. Yeah,
good tips for post. Yeah, like you say, when things start to ease, there's temptation to do other stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, one on should I go back and pick up on training that I've missed?
Yeah. No. No, I would suggest not. Keep moving forward. The runs that are the crucial runs are the long runs. You want to be getting those ones in. So if you have like a recovery run that you couldn't get done, I would suggest leave that. Focus on getting yourself prepared for the next long run. If you miss a long run, you might want to use that sort of double what we've just been talking about, doing either a morning or an evening one and getting it in on another day of the week. But generally, I would say the ones in the middle of the week, I wouldn't go back and do those. Keep moving forward, and keep your focus on the next run and making sure you're ready for that one. So you're not building too much fatigue.
Cool. So don't look back, just keep going forwards.
Keep going forwards. Yeah.
Cool. Let me just see what else. How far should I be running in training? Seen that come in a couple of times.
Yeah, and you know, a really difficult one to answer. It's going to depend so much on your running experience, your injury, you know, proneness to injury. There are some people that can go an awful long way without any injuries at all. And it doesn't seem to bring too much fatigue. Age is another thing that impacts how far you can go without needing quite a long recovery. So I'd say be careful with this one. Everybody, you know, this what I'm going to say next goes for ultras across the board. We are all individuals, and ultra running needs to be planned for the individual. There's an awful lot of chatter, which is fantastic. But do bear in mind that what works for somebody else might be worth testing, but it mightn't be the solution to your problem. And also, if somebody is running 80 kilometers, whatever these sort of extraordinary numbers that we see put out there, that mightn't be the best way to get you to the start line and to the finish line, the best way. So I would suggest, I've sort of got a rule of thumb. 100k, I would generally say around 55, so you've done over the halfway mark. And then you could back that up the next day with a shorter 10k, so then you've got into the sort of 65k range. I don't feel that you need to go too much more over that. As I said, unless you're really experienced, going anything over sort of 3.5 hours, I really limit my clients to that, because the risk of injury is getting great there. And then a 50k, I would probably go around 30 kilometers, something like that. I mean, you would rarely find an ultra runner that has run the distance they're going to run in a race as training. So don't feel that that's something that you need to be doing. That's once we get more races under our belt, we know how we feel in those latter stages, and the experience comes into play then. But don't feel you need to be running anywhere near race length in training.
I guess you can get like fixated on the distance that you're doing, but
absolutely. The key to all of this is not necessarily distance, and it's not speed. That's another thing actually I might like to put in there, because it's something I see an awful lot. It's consistency. Plan to be as consistent as possible. So when you're in your planning phase, as I said, I just want to reiterate that, try and maintain a consistent number of runs each week. Yeah, there'll be some weeks where you might drop a run, but consistency is key. And I just can't stress that enough. But also, just to go back to what I just mentioned there about speed, there can be a feeling that when you go out to run, you need to be fast and come back at half cut and dead and sort of crawling in through the back door. That's sort of a bit of an old way of thinking about running and sort of training per se. And I definitely buy into the periodization rule, which is work 80% of your runs are nice and easy. They're conversational. You'll come back feeling, I was okay. Maybe I could have gone a bit further. That's where you want to be for 80% of your running. 20% of your running is hard. It's the upper end of you're breathing quite hard. You're doing your hill sprints, or your sort of more pacey stuff, or you sprint to a tree, or you sprint to I say sprint, I don't really mean sprint. I mean, you up your pace to a tree or up your pace to a gate, so that you're not just always in that one running speed, so that your body gets used to being adapted, adapts to, suddenly, there's a bit of a change in tempo. But I do really believe, and there's quite a lot of research on this now, that if you run the majority of your runs at a comfortable conversational pace, you are going to be building all of those sort of, again, not too scientific, but all of the body systems that you're going to need to be able to run longer at that sustained pace. So yeah, that
makes sense. Yeah. I feel like we're probably moving on to the last couple of questions. Okay. Just one on training again on road versus trails. I think some people may be finding it harder to get out onto the trails because of where they live. What's your kind of recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, trail is preferable to try and replicate the race. Terrain is the way you really want to go, but we can't all do that, and I appreciate that. So then running. And sorry, if you can't get onto trail, then the next thing would be sort of a canal path, which is sort of graded. That's good too. Try and hunt some of those out. Old railway lines, any of those sorts of things. They're all not. I mean disused railway lines. And then road. And yes, you use what's around. I've got people I'm trying to train for hilly ultras with no hills, so you've got to get creative. Things like doing lunges and squats is within their run gives them the same stimulation. So use what you've got. If you can get out on weekends and plan in a few long runs on it might not even be the trail that you're going to use, but a trail would be a good idea. Yeah, and so, you know, I know some very, very good athletes who have managed to do some extraordinary running events, having only ever run on a treadmill because, you know, the weather or whatever the conditions. So, you know, it's not the end of the world. Don't get hung up about it. As I said, there are more important things. Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to end on one that's come in because I feel like it could be inspiring for everyone. Someone who said this, I didn't actually catch who it was. I don't know, Gillo6470, saying they're looking ahead and they're feeling a bit like scared by the mileage, like how to stay motivated. It's like, what would your tips be on kind of staying motivated with the training that people now have ahead for our events?
I touched on a few of them before. Running with a friend, making it into an event in itself. Now we can start going and seeing people for maybe a drink in a pub garden. Run to that end goal. What would be nicer than sitting in a garden having a pint after you've done, you know, your mileage? Try and find new routes. That's always a good motivator if you can find somewhere fresh to run. So it's sort of getting creative, really. Maybe you want to you drive somewhere, get the train somewhere, and run home. It's always nice to run home. You know, so there's an awful lot of brilliant trails you can go on and get dropped off and then run back. That would be another way to do it. So you know, don't be afraid to sort of mix it up, move out of your area. Try different run walk situations. If you're finding that the running, you're worried that you can't keep going, break it into a run walk. That's a really good way of keeping going for much longer. So but be disciplined again. So, you know, maybe you want to run for 30 minutes, walk for 5, run for 30, walk for 5, or you want to do an hour and then walk for 5. All of that sort of stuff is a way to get you going longer and breaking down the intimidation of it.
I've seen a couple of comments popping in, someone saying that running to pub is genius and someone else saying they regularly run to coffee and cake. I think that's great. Perfect. As well.
It's all about the reward, whatever gets you out of the door.
Especially at the weekend, you've got to combine the two.
Absolutely.
Cool, I think we're going to have to stop there. But thanks so much for getting through so many questions. For anyone who didn't get their question answered, I just kind of want to let you know to pop them just on our normal social channels. And then for anyone that's not familiar with, I think, Kerry, you're really familiar with it, we have the Threshold Trail Series participant forum on Facebook. So that's got lots of runners who've done our events before. So it's a really nice place to go and chat to people that are taking part in the session, taking part in the events. So yeah, I hope it's been as useful to everyone watching as it has been for me. Thanks again, Kerry.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on. I do hope, there was some nuggets that you can take away from that.
Running to the pub, definitely.
Yeah, it seems to have gone down well.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, good luck with the training, everyone that's watching. Have a good evening.
Good luck, and you know, don't worry too much. It will all become clear on the day.
It'll be fun in the end.
It
cool.
Will.
Thank you. Bye, Kerry. Bye.
Bye.